Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present, as well as the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong. My name is Paul James, and today I have the great pleasure to chat to a Supercoach expert. Emily, how are you?
Hi, how you going?
Very, very well. There's obviously a lot more to your story than just Supercoach, but I'm certainly, as someone who I feel like I do okay with the 2,100, 2,200 sort of ballpark somewhat consistently, but I feel like there's some advice I can take from a real pro, so I'm looking forward to picking your brain a little bit later on. But yeah, how's things?
Yeah, not too bad. I do shudder with the word expert, but I guess you get that when you win.
Yeah, I don't you can probably try and put whatever spin on it you like, but at the end of the day, a winner is a winner, and so that's a big badge of honour that very few will ever get.
Yeah. That's right.
But before we really wade into the expertise of yours that is Supercoach, the expertise that you don't necessarily want to acknowledge as an expertise, but where did footy first come into your life? You're a Cats fan, so how did the love of the Cats first form? I guess let's really delve into the origin story of you and this awesome game in the first place.
Yeah, well, like a true origin story, it starts with my father. Who was an Essendon man, he and his whole family of Essendon Bombers, and country boy, and he moved to Geelong, and he got swayed over by one senior Gary Ablett.
That's
and and his father-in-law, and he just became a true cat, and he just loved his cats, and he watched his cats lose and lose.
Oh yeah, a lot.
And a lot. And I remember, so I grew up, so I wasn't really into footy. I wasn't, but I'm an only child, but that's what I would end up doing with my dad, is I would watch cricket, I would watch footy, Geelong Cats, and really bad musicals. It's a weird blend, but the Cats was the one that's...
I can get around that.
But the funny thing is my mum would always, we would go somewhere exotic in September, Fiji, Cook Islands. So, and I just remember, and Geelong would be in the grand finals around that 1994, 1995.
Yeah. That whole early 90s, mid 90s period.
Yeah. And I'd be like swimming in the pool and be like, "Daddy, did we win?" And he's like, "No."
Don't ask me about it.
Don't ask me about it. So fast forward, interest, I was a Geelong supporter, didn't really spend a lot of time watching. Then fast forward, early noughties, uni, starting to get the boys are doing pretty well. It's about now 2004, I start watching intermittently.
We play a prelim that year, so there's a bit of success at that point.
Yes, yeah. And then 2005, I got my heart broken, as you know.
Yeah, recent guest on the show, the person responsible for that heartbreak.
Oh, no. Yes, I saw that. And I was actually my boyfriend at the time, who's not my husband. It was the end of a relationship. It's pretty much he just didn't understand when Sydney won, and he literally did the old, there, it's okay. And I'm like, don't touch me. Relationship was doomed. This is also the boyfriend that I said, "Oh, the Ashes are coming up. Do you want to go?" And he's like, "Oh, who are Australia playing?" Yeah, so that was doomed. But then from there, then 2006, I still was a true believer. Even though we
wasn't the year for us.
Wasn't the year for us. And then 2007. So then, it was... So that's my journey, and then I've been slowly becoming a lot more fanatic, I guess, over the years.
So I guess focusing in on 2007 a little bit, as my dog's clearly trying to kick my shed door in. That year itself, and things building, and obviously this gigantic streak that we were forming throughout the season that unceremoniously ended in the final round of the season, going into finals there.
Yes.
What were you thinking as things gradually built up there?
I was hopeful, and you know what? I know exactly where I was when we lost that match against Port Adelaide.
Oh, really? That was one of the few games that year that I actually didn't make it to, and was kind of relieved to at the time, but still instilled a bit of panic for the rest of the final series at that point.
I didn't actually attend a lot of footy because I never knew I would watch it fanatically on TV. I've only just started to realise the pleasure of actually going to the game and taking my children and everything, and they just love it. But I remember literally I was in my in-laws' hallway. It's so bizarre. I walked in and they're like, "Oh, we've lost," and I'm like, "But we're Geelong, and we've stopped losing." But no, I was quietly hopeful. But my friends just still talk about when we watched the grand final that I was the one hyperventilating at 3/4 time
when we were up by an obscene amount.
Yeah. So, and like, Emily, it's ridiculous. Like, just calm down. And I'm like, nah, I'm not until final siren. Can I actually just?
It's not an unfamiliar story though, I guess. Like, there's a few people I've spoken to that have been either alive for a lot of the failed grand final attempts, or even longer, have just been watching the club for 60, 70 years, and so they've not seen a lot of success through that time, prior to obviously 2007 and the egg finally being cracked, or they were just young enough but really into footy, and so understood the history, that all were kind of reacting the same way, like, okay, well, we haven't won this until that final siren goes, and I guess probably about halfway through the last quarter, and I was fortunate enough to be there in 2007 for the grand final, but at 3/4 time, I don't know if I was quite hyperventilating, but certainly extremely anxious still, because I felt like if there was a club to pull defeat out of the jaws of victory, it would have been us. And that's definitely not the club that we necessarily know now. Usually it's more likely to be the other way, and like, okay, we've got ourselves into a horrible, sticky situation here. They're going to find some sort of way, or that extra bit of will to either steal the game or at least terrify the opponent. It's very much what we see Collingwood doing to opposition these days. And we've been doing it for 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, nearly 20 at this point, really. If we want to go all the way back to 2004, when things first started to blossom.
Yep. Yep. And so the year after, 2008, I was on my honeymoon, and we watched it in this.
The grand final?
In the grand final, yeah. And when we were going to lose, I forget when it was, I just went to the pool and had a cocktail, and I didn't watch it. So I actually haven't got that embedded in my brain, but I was pretty traumatized. Were you at the game?
I was there again, so...
Yeah.
Oh, look, I could cop it, because even in my case, so the 2007 grand final, I was 18 that year, so... it was kind of, and I'd only just got my full MCC membership, so like, this is the best way to start. It was probably not that I wanted it for the club, but maybe for me personally to then have that loss the next year, little jolt to the system, was maybe the reality check that I needed personally. Otherwise, I get too carried away at such a young age.
Yeah, this is a little bit detour. But did you see that article about the guy whose son is a Hawthorn supporter, and like he's like 7, and he's talking about how disparaged he is and how hard it is to be a Hawthorn supporter. And we're like, no. This, like, don't get the violin.
Your three-peat started 10 years ago. Like, you've won 3 premierships in the last 10 years. Back off.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just like, but yeah, and but I don't know. I presume you weren't at the 2020 grand final?
No, couldn't make it for 2020. Yeah. That in 2009 are the grand finals that I've missed. So
okay. For me, I feel defeats, the ones that I've seen that I was actually watching. I do feel like 2008 we were the best team, and it still kind of stings. Absolutely. While I feel like 2020 Geelong were just the best team who actually did the COVID community thing well. We weren't necessarily the best team.
They adapted the conditions the best.
Yeah. And the Tigers, when, like, it still hurt, don't get me wrong, but when the Tigers did what Tigers did, or Dusty Martin. I mean, why couldn't Dusty Martin have an off years after? Anyway.
Yeah.
But let's just move on. I'm talking about how this is an easier grand final.
Easy to digest. They're still not easy regardless, I guess.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
So I guess as we kind of walk through some of those more successful ones, so there's 2007, there's 2009, there's 2011, and obviously most recently 22. Have you been fortunate, because we've kind of alluded to attendance at these events so far? Have you been fortunate enough to have gone to any of them at this point?
No, I haven't made a grand final. I missed last year's ticket. I
The ballot and all those.
Yeah, and I had a friend who had one ticket, and I missed out by minutes to get it. Anyway, but it's all right. I do it with the family. I do it with my husband's really big Cats family. So yeah, so that was good. But I made the prelim, so that was really good.
And really, I mean, as a lot of people say, that is kind of we kind of won that game fairly easily, but as a lot of people say, that is the most pure game of football all year, because there's still that, one person goes home and that's it, season over. But there's the corporate stuff is missing, or the ultra intense level of corporate stuff is missing. It's not filled with neutral supporters. It is filled with supporters that are Geelong, or in that case, Brisbane as well. Like it's really one of the best games to attend all year, especially if you're on the right side of the ledger at the end.
Yes, absolutely. It was just amazing, bloody, and I could enjoy that one. I kind of knew my anxiety was a little bit less.
About quarter time.
About quarter time.
Which strangely we then felt the exact same week, and I was far more flummoxed by that one. I couldn't believe that we were in the situation that we were the week prior, so early in the grand final as well. So
yeah. I still I had to do half time. I actually had to go, and Mitch Duncan's goal in the third quarter,
beginning of the third,
beginning of the third. I'm like, nah, we've got this. It's okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty common sentiment as well. So, okay, we've dominated the first half. Sydney's going to rebound. You did see some little signs in the last 10 minutes or so of the second quarter that they were just starting to get going. And you were worried that, maybe they're going to try, it's all going to start to click and they'll get themselves back into the game and maybe dominate the second half. And who knows, it becomes this frenetic final 5 minutes where both teams are within a goal of each other or something like that. Something terrifying to comprehend. But as you say, like Mitch kicking that goal and just nipping that energy that maybe Sydney had brought back in the bud, and instantly felt, okay, we're home, we can relax. This is not going to go pear-shaped.
Yeah, and see, the interesting thing with me is now obviously 07, I feel like it is incredible winning the first premiership in my lifetime. I feel like that is special. But my two I'm kind of putting that there. My two other really favourite grand finals. I'm sounding such like a wanker here. My two other favourite grand final wins.
Please go for it.
Are against teams that I quite like, and that is St Kilda and Sydney, because I thought Sydney were actually really respectful, like standing up and applauding Collingwood. I mean, and just those little things that they did that I feel
the respectful stuff. Yeah,
I
agree.
But they were bloody good. I mean, it's the same. The 09's my actual quiet favourite because it's redemption from 08. And we weren't the best team. We were the best team that game, but we showed grit and we showed determination and we came back. And I feel like that's why it's my... But 2022 is special as well because I still believed in the boys. I still knew that we were being... But if we do fall off the cliff, thank goodness we actually won a grand final in 2022 because it would have just sucked if we had fallen off the cliff, which I didn't think we were going to.
It was worrying times in the first few rounds of the year this year, but...
Yeah. Oh, that Gold Coast match was woeful.
That was the one where okay, Carlton, Collingwood, sure, we got close and they were good opposition. I hate to be too disparaging to the Gold Coast, but obviously they are not of that calibre yet. Yeah. And to lose so badly to them, I was really concerned. So, I mean, I've said a bit of this already on the Hoop Show's core show recordings, the weekly recaps and all those. But yeah, I was pretty anxious and pretty terrified. But thank God we had the second half that we did against Hawthorn to kind of right the ship and go from there. Yeah,
that's right. And we had got some key people back, and so. And I feel like we're just clicking, and I feel like the boys might have had a slightly longer off season.
Jeremy Cameron seems to have indicated that a little bit with some of his commentary about the number of quarter pounders and stuff that he was putting back over the break. Didn't seem to affect him at all, but
No.
he seems to be a totally different beast in terms of what he can and can't do.
Yeah, it's like a super beast.
Superhero of some sort.
Superhero, yeah. Yep. I'm really excited because I've just booked in for the Tommy and Jerry show that my local pub actually. Bannockburn Pub is hosting Tom Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron. If you're interested, I think it's Tuesday, June the 13th. But it's my second show. So I was told Tom Stewart and Cameron, and he's so funny.
I'll have to keep it in mind. This is going to be a weird vacuum for everyone who's watching and recording now. And I tried to largely keep it off social media in the days since because I don't need to make too big a scene about it. But a certain former guest of the show has swept in and saved the day. So as we record this, for everyone watching and listening, this is a vacuum immediately after the Geelong and Essendon game. This won't be going live straight after the Geelong and Essendon game or the week of, but not too far down the road. But I took my 4-year-old son, to his first game this weekend, to the Geelong and Essendon game, and we were sitting up the top because we had his little 2-year-old sister, and you got 2 kids of that age. You want to give them a little bit of breathing room, and we're MCC members, so it gives us a little bit of scope to kind of find a spot wherever. We don't have to feel too compelled to grab a certain seat or any of that sort of stuff. And we sat a bit further up the back in the top level, and they could just run around if they needed to. Turns out my son just had a great day. He was sitting there waving the flag. I bought him, loving every moment of it. We decided with about 10 minutes to go down to level 1 and try and get a spot near the fence for when the players start handing out the balls and giving high fives and have his little moment with whoever happens to come by. Well, he's unbelievably lucky because we popped ourselves down the front. A couple of Essendon supporters vacated and we jumped straight into their spots. And who rolls up? But the exact 2 people you were talking about, both Tom and Jeremy Cameron. Hands out a ball to... Jeremy hands out a ball to a kid. My son missed out. He was like, oh, okay, but there's Tom. He calls him Tomo. Hands the ball out, keeps moving on, but gets a high five from Jeremy on the way through, so he was really excited about that. Tom comes over, fortunate enough to get one of the little sign balls they hand out in his very first match. He was beside himself excited.
Oh, gosh.
That excitement within 5 seconds, he was sitting up on my shoulders, which made this really hard for me to act and respond to what had happened immediately afterwards. Within 5 seconds, I would say 8-9-year-old kid snatched the ball out of my son's hands and runs off. Absolutely, it went from being his favourite day, I think probably ever, the way he was talking prior to that, to he was just so miserable and deflated by the whole thing. So a massive credit, and if I haven't already done this in a video on the Hoop Show channel properly by the time this actually goes live, a massive thanks to Gryan Miers, former guest of the show and obviously starting 23 player for the Cats. Got in touch with Gryan and explained the situation. He's doing me a solid to try and find one. He doesn't know where they get stored at the club during the week, but he's gonna do his best to try and get his hands on one, get Tom to sign it, and then get it parcelled off to my son so that he can kind of get that moment back.
Oh, that's so dirty.
After little kid stole it. So we're... That kid's parents might have failed them a little bit, but setting that aside, massive thanks to Gryan and the club for helping out in that one, because my son was devastated the next morning, and he had to go to kinder, and apparently the teachers got in touch with us afterwards, said that he was just complaining about it all day. So, but for me to be able to come home that very same day, having spoken to Gryan during the day while I was working, and for him to say, yeah, I'll be able to get one and bring it back to him, it just changed him completely. He was totally up and about and excited again. So I guess it's a real credit to the impact that AFL players can have. That was obviously a really look in the grand scheme of life. It's such a small thing, but it's not. But for a 4-year-old, it's everything, and that got stripped from him for a moment. So it was he's been stoked since. So. Awesome. Tangent aside, thank you very much to Gryan and the club for helping fix up a really awesome moment. And maybe I'll have to pop out, maybe take... What time of the day is this Tom and Jeremy
it's
thing?
Night. It's night, and it's adults. Probably they kind of say it's for kids, but...
the beers are flowing and that sort of thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Not for them.
They will tell the story about grand final. Jeremy will just say he just drinks for 8 days straight.
Yeah. Okay.
So... It's late
Yeah, I
too.
won't.
It's from 8.
No,
So
definitely not for a 4-year-old.
definitely not for a 4-year-old.
But I might have to try and get along myself then. It'll be good. So, as we kind of alluded to before, because that was one hell of a tangent. I touched on before, Supercoach is a massive part of what you are known for on the internet here, because for anyone who's not aware, Supercoach Mama, the 2021, was that right? Yep. Winner of Supercoach.
Yeah.
That's not a small feat, because how many people compete every year? It's minimum 100,000.
Yeah. So 164 teams. It's 164,000 teams. How many of teams are double ups? We'll never know. But
well, yeah, there's always a few double ups, I guess. But
there's a few. So few people play. So prize money is pretty good too. So 50K.
Never going to complain with that. It's a nice little surprise injection into the bank account that, Jesus, especially if it happened right now with all that's going on in the economy, it'd be awesome. But I guess where did the love of Supercoach first form? Because there is AFL itself, and there's lots to love about the game, but this is a whole other level of meta that you're getting involved in. Now, I love Supercoach myself, but and we'll try and invest a bit of time into it. But I suspect to be able to achieve what you achieve, there's another level of kind of investment there potentially. How did the love of Supercoach first form, and how did you start to work out the intricacies in such a way that netted you a win?
Yeah, well, I never started Supercoach thinking I would win. I don't know many people, but I know people actually who, almost dedicate a lot, and like, I aim to win. If I do this and this, I could win Supercoach. I wasn't one of those people. I started playing when I was on maternity leave with my first son, and I'm actually, like, Sudokus weren't really doing their thing, So, tangent a little bit about me. I'm actually an occupational therapist. I work with special needs kids. I do lots of full on. Like work is full on. I mean, not having a baby is full on, but I wasn't using a certain part of my brain, of my clinical thinking, more executive functioning skills, and kind of disappear. And so I was looking for something, the numbers and stats, and I've always loved the numbers and stats of football. As my husband says, maybe more than football itself, the actual game itself.
I mean, I'm a maths teacher professionally, so it certainly scratches similar sort of itches. Yeah.
And I just, side note, I'm just loving watching Hawkins' top goal scorer go up and up and up and up. So 753 is he on? 753, I think.
Yeah, that'd sound about right. And again, of course, everyone, we're recording in a vacuum. I'll double check that number while we're chatting. But that would sound right. AFL.
And he's just behind Jack Revolt. Anyway.
Yeah, he's chasing him down, and that's awesome, because they're active players. It's not some new notch to overcome, but actually someone who, they started, I think, the same year or thereabouts.
Ooh, we're testing our memories.
Yeah.
These are like, I feel like,
yep.
I don't know.
They both started. They've both played for as many years. So assuming they both debuted in this. Oh no, hang on. Sorry, that's.
Yeah. So Tommy didn't play as much football early on.
Yeah, they've. Yeah, I guess it could be one of those little things, because Tom obviously debuted in his very first season. I'm not sure if Jack Rewalt did the same, but Richmond were a bit of a salad dwell at that point, so I'd imagine he possibly did.
Since Tom Hawkins is actually Benjamin Button, so he would have been really old, and so he's just had to go a little bit younger.
Well, and that's the thing. Jack's nearly done. Tom's getting to his best only now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. So I started Supercoach, and I started playing that for years. I had 1 or 2 years off, and then I went back to it. I loved listening to podcasts. Getting more and more podcasts, and like content has just exploded, but it wasn't too many podcasts. I'm actually outliving the 2 podcasts I've listened to. So Supercoach Coach, they've kind of not retired, but they've actually not doing it this year. And Jock Reynolds have just, like Patch and Let Dog from Jock Reynolds have just announced that this is their last year. And I'm like, I'm getting so
What am I going to
old. What am I going to do?
I better make my own.
I better make my own, yeah. Oh, I've thought about it. I just don't have the time, and I'm not. Anyway, so then I had an all right year in 2017 or 18. I was 600th, ran out of trades. And I would just be run out of trades. And I thought the key to do well in Supercoach is to get a pod. So I had started Jack Darling one year. He gave me an 7 or something ridiculous. And, you know, I just had all these really random players in my team because that's what you did. And then, and then...
So and I assume, just for those listening, a pod being a point of difference.
Sorry,
player of
point
difference,
of difference.
Right?
So someone that not everybody has.
Yeah.
So then I just decided, I'm almost... 2020 happened, crap. 2021 was really, really... Yeah, so start of 21 was really, really hard for me personally. 2020 was a really hard year, I think, for lots of people. I had glandular. I was really unwell. I had 3 young boys. And
there's never a good time for that, let alone having 3 young children. Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of had to make some reflections in my life, and like I remember my boys once were talking about superheroes, and my boy, who would have been about 5 or 6, goes, "Oh, your phone girl, you're always on your phone." And I'm like, it just hit me really badly. I'm like, I don't want to be, that's not my superpower. I don't want to have that superpower. You're the mum who's always on your phone because you're bloody super coach. And I'm like, right, that's it. I'm just like, I just put it away after 2020. And then I was like, oh, I think I'm quitting. And then February came along, 2021, and I'm like, you know what? I'm doing a team for me. Bugger everybody else. I'm just doing a team for me. I would still do it. I still like to do it. And that's how I started the team, and it started really well. And then, of course, then I had to keep it up for the whole year. So, yeah.
You've got to keep feeding the beast.
Keep feeding the beast, yeah. But I learned to try to contain it in a way as much as I could. It was really hard near the end of the year when I was, so I became top number 1 at round 18. I had 5 rounds of being number 1. So that was really stressful.
Yeah, that month and change would be a lot of stress because you're really trying to hang on to it. You know, there's people breathing down your throat. You probably, I mean, when you're at that sort of pointy end, and I guess for the most part, everyone starts to know each other that's in that sort of ballpark a little bit. Is there a bit of commentary that starts coming from those people? Do people start chirping each other? How does that tend to work when you're at that level of the elite?
Well, I actually do a Patreon. I'm part of a Patreon, Dr. Supercoach, and we...
Yes, I know one.
Yes, yeah. So we, as a community, we started some people that other people didn't, so Ridley and a couple of other players. So our community was doing really quite well, to the point that number 2, number 4, number 5, number 8 in top 10 were Dr. Supercoach. But number 2 was part of the community and all our chats and everything. So anyway, and he was on Twitter as well. But we were very kind to each other. I'm a very positive person anyway. But wasn't not too much stick going on. But it was a bit like, oh, we did. What are they doing?
Just the most gentle of banter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, the other person's feeling it as well. So you don't want to focus too much on that. You want to focus on doing what you can do and do well.
Yeah, that's right. But COVID impacted, and you've got to have luck, and I did have a smidgen of luck, and I'm completely honest about that. So the person in front of me, I always forget who that was, had Callum Mills, late out, similar to LDU if you're super coach. So yep. Earlier this year when he pulled out of his calf really late. But Cameron
didn't enjoy that one.
Yeah. Did you have him?
Yep.
Oh no. Do you still have him? Sorry.
Did I pull him? No, I think I've held on. I think I held for now.
Anyway, so Callum Mills, he was it was COVID restrictions, and his friend had just got COVID and he just found out, and they were literally like, Callum, you're out, get off, put someone on, and then Supercoach locked out. So it's literally like Callum Mills is laid out. It's like Callum Mills is laid out.
But can't change.
You can't change. You can't trade. And then I think possibly number one had one or two donuts and it just, and that's how it became number one. And I'm like, it's not
you
how
Stephen Bradbury'd in.
Yeah, well, yeah. But I had a trade left. I was the only one in the top 10 that had a trade left to the last round.
Which also, that helps a lot.
Yes.
Did you need to use it though?
Funny thing is, I would have won without it. But I traded Jake Stringer in.
Because I feel like, and again, I guess discussing that pressure that you and anyone else would be feeling at that point, there's probably a sense of freedom that perhaps comes with not having any trades left. Because like, there's nothing I can do. I just have to put my faith in what I've assembled and hope that nothing goes wrong. Hope that there's no Callum Mills moment.
Yeah, no, it was torture.
But with
it was
one, you're
torture.
questioning everything.
Yeah, and I left it till the Sunday, and had the most obvious choice. So Jake Lloyd has had a bit of an off couple of years. He's actually, I think he possibly might be coming back. But Jake Lloyd,
yeah, he does feel like it.
Yeah, he was coming back, and he was the obvious choice Saturday night. But I decided not to get him. He scored 155, and I went, oh no, hardly slept Saturday night. And then, so I wanted to keep it and to make sure there was no laid out. And then Jake Stringer was, and he did fine. But
so who came out for Stringer?
Oh, I had Zeeble I had Tom Stewart on the bench. I refused to trade I call him my Supercoach boyfriend, because he
scores pretty well.
Yeah. So I actually had Tom on the bench, and I had a rookie that I had a forward defender, so I could interchange
toggle
them
as you need to.
Yeah. So I could. That was the trouble as well. I could get a defender and a forward. So Zeeble went out and I traded in Jack Stringer for 2 hours. And the funny thing is, we were watching the Essendon Geelong game, and my husband goes, he doesn't actually talk about it too much, but he's like, oh, Jack, I've got a fondness for Stringers. When you brought him in, and I was watching that game, and you were out in the supermarket, I was in the supermarket because I refused to watch it.
You couldn't watch?
Nah.
Well, and there's a bit of it like, I can't watch this, but also who knows what's going on with the opposition's players anyway. There's a lot that's just out of your control at that point. So let's just sit down at the phone or the computer afterwards and just see what happened. So
yeah.
What was that moment like when you'd actually cracked the phone open or whatever and taken a look and gone, oh my God, I've held on, like I'm number one still?
Well, it's actually, the funny thing is actually there's a guy called Supercoach Data, who actually basically tells you who the top teams are, what everyone has, and he actually calculates how everyone's doing. And he was DMing me, and it was after the first quarter of the Essendon Collingwood game, so it's the second last game of the year of the home alone. It's getting tired. Anyway, he DM'd me and goes, I want to call it. You are this far ahead. I don't know. And I'm like, nah.
Calling it like it's an election.
Yeah. Seriously. And I'm like, no, don't call it. I'm not. Emily, you're going to win. And I'm like, just don't call it. Anyway, it was 3/4 time. And he's just like, I'm calling it. I'm calling it. You've won.
Was it a similar thing to the grand finals though, where you still just continued to refuse to accept it, or?
No, it was it was impossible for me to lose, and I knew that. But it's just, I was that point for a really long time. The funny thing is, I was in the washing detergent aisle, and I just put my head, I just put my head down on the and I just had deep breaths, and that was me. I was absolutely cooked. Well,
it's not every day that you win 50k, is it?
No, and the money was great, but just winning it was pretty cool. Like, once I had gone so far, it would have been a bit of a bummer to miss out. But
well, I suppose that's also another thing is like to get that close and then suddenly fall short.
That's right. But it was a really, it was amazing. It was I loved it. But yes, she's a cruel beast, especially this year. It's just Supercoach is just on a whole nother level this year.
How so?
Injuries, suspensions.
All the tackling and bump stuff is seeming to knock out quite a few of the. I mean, it's Callum Ward we've had. Who else's profile that has either taken a hit or, I mean, I guess Lachie Neale obviously was nearly caught up in that as a result of that one. Who else has actually been taken out by a bump or a tackle?
Oliver, I was looking at him.
Yeah.
He's not a really huge one, but
yeah, he's a contender. He's certainly a consideration. With the advent of so many of these suspensions coming from it, it throws up a whole other curveball as well. You almost start thinking about, maybe I'll just play the players who like to stay exclusively outside because the odds of them getting pinged are a bit lower.
Yeah, that's true. But it's all a bit of a, who knows? I had a rule that I went on 360 for like 36 seconds, and I said, oh, it's a really long year, durability, blah blah blah. And I wasn't selecting players over 30, and I broke the rule for Liam Jones, who scored 18, and I stretched the rule for Tommy Stewart, who turned 30 in March, and Stewart got 18.
Oh yeah, because of course he got injured straight away.
And that was just, and I'm playing catch up. I started 77,000 round one. Currently sitting on 1,700 now.
I'll take a little look at mine while we're chatting, but I think that's I'm certainly feeling depressed just hearing that, so I'm sure I'm nowhere near 17,000. Oh, look, I won the round. Rankings.
Yeah, so 1,000.
I'm like placed now almost where you were at the end of round one. I'm like 69,000. Like I'm out of 183,000 this season so far. Oh, that's not the.
It's all right. It's okay. It's all about the climb, baby.
But yeah, it is about the climb. I am climbing my way back up, but oh dear, not ideal. Anyway,
so
we'll endure.
It
makes me feel better though when like the person who's on top at the moment, Best Coast Eagles, I outscored them this round.
Oh,
they clearly had a really bad round.
Yeah. So there are exceptions to the rule, but usually the top 10, top 20 changes quite dramatically
early in the piece.
Early in the piece, but there is exceptions to the rule, and it's just about playing the long game.
Yeah, there's a lot of consistency in and around those who, like, for all those who scored in that top 10, are currently placed in the top 10 overall. And then you've got this Best Coast Eagles who was about 200, 300 points behind everyone else, who's number one, but just had a much poorer round out of nowhere, apparently.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one.
And it is interesting. But trades, you don't know how many people trades they've used and boosts. But and that's when things are going to get interesting. The
extra round this year, all of those sorts of little variables that come into the mix. It's a really fascinating thing, and I guess for anyone who is watching or listening today and isn't a Supercoach player currently, it is really, really fantastic. Whether you're coming through the lens that we both discussed before, is kind of being people who enjoy a bit of statistical based stuff and like pouring through the data and trying to use it in some way and applying it to something that we also thoroughly enjoy in footy. Then that's a great lens to look at it through. My granddad, who's now close to 80, I would drop by his place every now and then, and I would walk into his study space, and there was books just full of like handwritten notes that he was building about all the players that he was kind of considering. He was keeping track of them all. It was all data that if you spend it on Supercoach Gold, you could just get that at a snap of a finger. But like he was doing it all himself, recording all the numbers, tracking them overseas, all that sort of stuff. It was so impressive. But he loved it through the lens of it was just at his age something that's really great for just the brain and the cognitive stuff. So I mean, I'm not saying everyone watching or listening to this show right now is in that same sort of age bracket and might need it for the same reasons, but it appeals to so many different audiences for so many different reasons. It's a really wonderful game that. Have you ever considered the alternative being AFL fantasy?
Well, Supercoach is slowly merging into fantasy. It's my beef. I'm like an old school. Give me 30 trades, kind of. But if you made it this far to this video and you're going, I have no idea what Supercoach is on fantasy football. So basically, just very briefly, we're talking about you have you have Supercoach. You have 30 players from all the four different
Selected
positions.
from all the clubs.
Yeah, from all the clubs. $10 million, and it's a money game. So you obviously
fantasy budget.
Yeah, you don't stop real money. Sorry. And so what you do is you're trying to get full premium. However, $10 million doesn't get you that far. So you actually have to play the money game, get rookies if they actually exist and don't get injured. And the more points players score, so they get points from doing actions like kicking, handballing, tackling, kicking goals. And Supercoach is different from fantasy football because
efficiency is factored in.
Yeah, efficiency, and it also, does the scaling if someone kicks a goal, a
pivotal
match-winning
time,
goal, pivotal time. Also does negative points for turnovers. Yeah, I was going to say Toronto, but he's actually been doing really well.
Yeah, but he can be a culprit.
Yeah, disposal efficiency. And so Supercoach is and so fantasy you actually have two trades every round.
I haven't gone back to fantasy in so long I don't even know anymore.
And so you don't have to worry about keeping track of how many trades you've used, because with Supercoach, well, especially the way it was, is there was no way near as many trades if you traded every round as if there were actual games. So you do run out of trades really quickly. So it's a very strategy game. I don't know. I find
there's pros and cons.
Yeah. I can't get my mind around switching, doing two things. I've got,
Oh no, players who are compatible for one are sometimes the polar opposite in the other version. That much I learned really early on in the piece, and it made me appreciate the strategic elements of Supercoach more so than what there is in fantasy. It was easy to sit back and go, okay, well, this person you can reliably expect to get 40 disposals and that's it. Tom Mitchell, for example, obviously translated pretty well in both, but he would be an absolute monster in fantasy because it was all about just the raw numbers. How many times to kick at a handball, whatever. Whereas in Supercoach, he could get that many times, but then have that poor disposal efficiency, for example, as you say. Or isn't popping up when it's actually important, so those points don't carry as much value. And it was that I really appreciated, that I'd have to think not just about, okay, he could get this many, but where does he get them? What does he do with them? That sort of intricate layer is what really makes this game so much more interesting to me.
Yeah, that's right. And I just think it's the better game, and I just love it. And I don't have the brain space and the time, and I've got hardly it for Supercoach.
Well, it's a totally different way of thinking again. It's chess and checkers.
Yep. So so that's why I haven't really thought about it. I did Footy Tipping, which is a different thing, but people who don't really understand Supercoach, and like Emily won something footy related. Emily, footy tipping. Oh, you'll be Lee, you won Footy Tipping, and I'll be like, it's really not.
It's not quite.
It's really not quite. So I actually did Footy Tipping last year. Came third in my workplace competition, all girls.
Yep.
But I thought that was pretty good for my first year. But I'm not doing it this year. It's just again, I'm like, nah. I just can watch Barrack for who I want to Barrack for without going, I thought Pies, I'll have to barrack for them.
Workplace footy tipping's been torturous for me since I started working at my current workplace, which is now I'm into my 6th or 7th year. Every year I'd come second.
Oh no.
Couldn't believe it. Last year, finally won, and I tied with someone.
Oh.
So I can never just straight outright win this thing. Season started very poorly this year, similar to yourself. I was about 4 or 5 tips off the running in after about the first 2 rounds or something like that. I've clawed back that margin now. I'm only 1 tip behind. So, okay, cool. We're getting ourselves into a good spot again. And again, it's all these little meta games that are just so fascinating. And there's nothing more than, I think, a little $30 donation at the beginning of the year. And I'll hopefully take away another 200 and something odd dollars as a minimum if I come second again.
Hey, don't do Nathan Buckley. Tied is okay. Tied first is okay.
Yeah, look, I'll take it. Can't complain. It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I'm sure the person in third didn't appreciate it as much because the 2 first took an even larger pool than normal. So.
No.
So
Um,
sucks with them.
yeah. So I'm very chuffed that Richmond is 16th. So
Oh yeah,
I mean, I don't think Richmond supporters are going to be watching this, so I don't think I have to apologise. But
yeah, don't apologise. I
um,
know. I know. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the person, or maybe just seen him in the coverage. Do you know Trout? He's a big Richmond person. You might see him in the crowd every now and then. He's got this big yellow like afro wig that he wears.
oh,
Yeah, his wife works with me, and she's commented on the show once or twice. I'm like, why are you watching this, Richmond supporter? So every now and then there's folks from other persuasions that tune in from time to time.
yeah.
But we can say whatever we want.
Yeah, okay, great. I reckon keep tipping against them. They're not very good. I mean, they might come back. So they're and Sydney's really surprising.
Well, both are suffering from the same things. They just can't get players on the field.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. So
yeah.
Not when we've got to play them. Feel free to have as many out as you like, but yeah, it's the world of these kind of meta footy games is incredibly fascinating and it attracts so many people. Obviously, tipping has been a thing for decades. Supercoach and fantasy, a far more recent sort of thing, but even those have now got lengthy histories. I certainly remember playing. It wasn't called fantasy at the time, but whatever the original name of the AFL endorsed kind of one was at the very, very beginning. I was playing that when I was a teenager at school. I'd kind of swing around in the computer room. I can picture the whole thing now because I actually work there, and so I walk into the classroom from time to time like, yeah, I remember how I wasted time in here. But I'd swing around and I'm thinking about, okay, how can I swing Jared Wade into because he would be the dual position player thing. Okay, how can I use him either as a defender or a forward? But this was between 15 and 20 years ago now. So,
well, you've been playing longer than me.
Well, again, that was more the fantasy style one. It wasn't about efficiency. Once Supercoach came along, I certainly jumped on that, but I can't do it like you can. So,
oh yeah, I just think just keep doing it and just enjoy. And so if you want to get a competitive edge, it's trying to avoid the side swapping and trying to get. So who's the worst performing person on your team? It's usually a rookie. So the aim of the game is to get them off, and that's your goal. And like so. I'm umming and ahhing, so I have Will Setterfield. I got hooked by him, and he didn't score all that well with Cats, but we just blitzed them. So of course, so I'm just wondering whether I do upgrade him, but I still have a couple of rookies on field, VC and captain. So some people, if you don't have a lot of time, and something that I would recommend is actually choose the more dependable person as your VC.
Go the loophole.
And go the loophole because you're setting yourself up, especially this time with the concussion rule. If people, people are getting subbed a lot quicker. So I feel like captaining is actually really risky. So if it doubles your score, so a captain will double your score, and there's loopholing and everything.
Look, sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't. So if I can use my most recent experience actually to attest of how it sometimes doesn't work for you. So I have Tim English. I've been relying on Tim English all year as the captain. I don't think he's screwed me around once, but I've been playing the loophole thing, so he would always be my VC, and then I'd go and I think I was using Charlie Constable, who I've still just not been able to get him out since he surprisingly fell out of the Gold Coast team. But I've been happy enough to do it because I've had the emergencies to be able to, like decent emergencies to be able to do the work, and I'll swing him out when the opportunity's right. Well, I wasn't happy with how Tim English was tracking. Like, okay, I need to get proactive here because the timing of the games. I still had the LDU situation from before. Okay, I need to work out how I need to massage this, but also be conscious of the fact that my captain is not working out for me the way I want right now. All right, well, I'm stuck with obviously my VC being English. I'll toss the captaincy on someone else who is flying this year. Let's put him on Dacos. And Dacos has his worst game of the year by a mile. Scores 72. Could not believe it. So somehow I managed to hang on to win in this random league that I've been pulled into, but no thanks to him.
Yeah. No.
So, I mean, it shows that he's human. That's nice.
Yes.
As a an opposition supporter, it's nice to see that he can actually have a bad game, but not as his Supercoach captain. Or coach.
I know he has to be tagged pretty heavily, and a good tagger as well, and not every team has a good tagger.
Yeah.
So now we know that Adelaide can
apparently they can squash Nick Dacos, or up to a point anyway. Contain him.
Yeah, which has worried me because I have Stewart. Do you have Stewart?
Tom Stewart.
Did you?
Yeah, I've got him at the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't have him at the beginning, so I felt okay.
Stop it.
I felt okay. He was one I thought, I can try and get him on board later on, and felt instantly vindicated, obviously, with how things worked out in round one. But I mean, my back line I'm largely happy with. There's just, as you say, it's this thing that all Supercoach players are trying to do, which is cycle out those rookies, those younger players who typically aren't scoring as much, hope that they build up enough value, and then try and elevate significantly from there. So I'm just a little bit behind the pace on where I'd like to be in that space, because I've probably got 2 to 3 that, two in the forward line that are averaging numbers that I'm not at all happy with. Yeah, similar sort of story in the midfield at the moment. So I'm getting there. It's not many that I need to replace, but if I can pull that off sooner rather than later, I'll be much happier with how I'm tracking. Not going to be able to chase you or anyone at the top, but
you might be able to chase me.
But personal satisfaction.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. Yes, we'll see how we go. Hopefully, it's going to be a long season. So
yeah. So as we start to wind things down, and we'll focus a little, because we are a Geelong show at the end of the day, and like to hone in on that sort of stuff. In your eyes, having seen a bit of the Cats over the course of the last couple of decades, who would be, and would have explored a little bit of the history as well, who in your eyes would be the greatest Cat that you've ever seen?
The greatest Cat that
you've ever seen. So it gives you the ability to, like, if you've seen old footage and you want to say Polly or someone like that, then you're more than welcome to. If you want to keep it a bit more modern
Gary
day.
Ablett Jr. Yeah. I haven't seen much Gary Ablett Sr. Before you get back to me, I haven't actually personally seen. So Gary, and I've seen him with my own eyes. So Gary Ablett Jr. I still remember, you might remember, as I said, I didn't attend a lot of actual physical games, but we attended this one. Is when he was sadly at Gold Coast, and he just did the most amazing goal from
that big
the
floaty
boundary
thing in Geelong.
Yeah, in Geelong.
Yeah. And the crowd stood up and applauded. And
this crowd did a standing ovation, right? Like, he's just like...
oh, no, sorry, finish that first.
No, that's it. But yeah.
I heard a great story about that exact game this weekend from Steve Johnson. He was talking about on the radio and about how it's the first time that he'd ever been issued a tagging job when it went to go tag Gary Ablett. And he felt pretty good about himself because he got 32 disposals and 3 goals, and thought, this tagging thing's pretty easy, until it popped up on the screen that Gary had 50 disposals going the other way, and it obviously kicked that one goal. He's like, and never got given the tagging job again.
I'm doing quite well.
50 disposals, huh?
Yeah. So,
and you think you know the guy, having played with him a bit, but apparently Stevie J had no idea whatsoever. So,
yep,
is what it is. Well, given that selection, and you were alluding to senior as well, this is a different kettle of fish, I guess, in terms of how it's framed. If you were starting a team and you had a schoolyard pick between junior and senior, which way would you go?
I would go.
Yeah, it's a very different sort of question at that point, isn't it?
I would go junior, because I feel like he's a midfielder, and so start in the middle. And my second pick would be Tom Hawkins. I'm just cheating.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair.
So did you see? So someone to just loop it to, and Gary, I have never seen anyone kick so accurately into
a leading forward.
50, into leading forward. I mean, Danger was copying it beautifully on the weekend, but Gary Ablett did it first
from day one. And even then, Danger can get a little bit over enthusiastic from time to time, and it just happens to sail over that tall forward's head.
I got
love
the
him.
ball. I'm
Love
going to
him.
kick it as far as I can.
He just
into
can't
the
help
spot.
himself.
Boom. And it's
He
like,
can't kick it. He can't kick
Yeah.
it 80% or 90%. It's 100 or it's a handball.
Where was that ball going, Danger? Yeah, so no, I would pick Gary Ablett Jr. again.
That very good call. Of the current group of players, who's your favourite? Like, and they're not necessarily like the junior, senior schoolyard pick. None of that sort of stuff. But just I guess who's the player that just continues to catch the eye and I guess you're most invested in.
Yeah, well, Tommy Stewart is pretty up there. I mean, it's pretty bloody hard to go past Hawkins as well. And I'm just going to cheat again and just name a couple of players.
Give me a laundry list. That's fine.
But yeah, so favorite and Brad Close. The
favorite of the hoop show. He's the mascot basically at this point.
Yes. Just they're probably my moment. Of course, Danger, but I do Tommy Stewart. I think. And of course, had a soft spot like everyone did of Selwood and everything. But Tommy.
Well, unfortunately, Joel's not an active player, so that kind of takes that chip off the table for people. So. Yeah.
So no, Tommy Stewart.
And
I controversially thought that he might get I thought he would get the captain over Danger, but.
So did I. Maybe we have similar sort of reasoning. I just thought that like Danger was closer to the end than Tom, and so I thought that might have been the set. If it gets to a point where it's maybe a coin toss between the two of them, which it certainly sounded like it was in the end. Like it didn't feel like they were at all concerned as to which way they went. Then I thought, maybe go with the guy who's got the potential to stay there longer. No offense, Danger, but you're a bit older.
But the interesting thing is that whenever you hear Danger speak and he's talking about the leadership, he says we a lot. Like we.
Oh yeah, he talks about the two of them.
The two of them together. And I wonder if they actually discussed having co-captains and then they're just like...
Club says no to co-captains, but we'll just act as if we are though, right?
Yeah, I just the vibe is like, Club thinks it's a bit wanky. Like the GWS is like co-captains. Did GWS have like 3 at one point? I don't know.
Yeah, Sydney had 3 at one stage, if I remember. I think maybe GW. Yeah, there was a few teams that went down the 3 path, and I couldn't believe it. Like that's just like sure, okay, they're all great leaders, but choose. No one's going to be at like. Are they that sensitive?
Oh, and it's just be like whose decision? It just it's completely.
And they all Spider-Man style pointing at each other.
I was going to use the Spider-Man thing, and it's used in a different context in the meme of just like same like duo thing, but it's just like
make a decision, and it's just them pointing at each other.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so Danger's it's winning me over a little bit, but he's always been really, really good with lots of different things. But
for sure.
Yeah, I thought they would have gone for the long term, but. It's just a Lingy move. They did it with Cameron Ling.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, I also thought that it was a potential concern with Danger because he was already head of the AFL PA and he is already incredibly front-facing when it comes to the media. He has a really young family. I think Tom's just a little bit older because he had kids at a younger age. I thought there was just a few other variables as well that just seemed to... Okay, it feels like Tom's in a better position to be able to take this, especially if you think it's a 50-50. Well, then let's not dump too much on Danger, but we've seen that after a slow start he's now 4th I think in the a lot of the MVP voting and all those sorts the coaches awards, that's what I'm looking for. It's clearly not causing him too many hassles, so maybe it's improving even further because he probably hasn't started a season this hot in a few years. The body's up and running. He might be kind of the revert. He might be having his own Tom Hawkins sort of moment here where he's now starting to fine wine.
But I really hope that he will rest because we need this
keep him fresh.
Finals. Yeah, absolutely.
Got to look after those older bodies now. Of the next crop that are coming through, is there anyone who just catches the eye and that you just have that good feeling about?
Yeah, I've really been a fan of Max Holmes, and I really is he young enough?
Yeah, he absolutely counts. He's 20, 21 now? He counts.
Yeah. and not giving away where Max lives, but Max lives next door to my mum and dad.
Oh, okay.
And they've just
strategically rock up at mum and dad's a bit more these days.
I'm there a lot anyway. But the funny thing is when Max met Dad, my dad, bless his soul, he's his own person. He's special. Anyway, he said, oh, he played for the Geelong Cats, and Dad asks him, oh, do you hope to play for the Firsts one day? And he's like, yeah.
He just leant into it. Yeah, okay, right.
And I'm like, thank goodness Dad didn't ask him about the premiership, because that would have been a bit.
Oh yeah, that would have broken his heart.
But I said to Mum,
you can see the fire in the belly this year, though. Like,
yeah,
you can
absolutely.
see him playing like he's certainly playing like, I'm going to get it this year.
Yeah. But it was interesting. Mum talked to his mum one day, and his mum was like, his hamstring was fine. They just didn't want to test it, and they're like, he could have played, and it's like,
well, we know. I think we all know he probably could have, but what if it's that tight moment in the grand final? And it's the things you can do. I mean, especially with his mum being obviously a pro, but athlete exclusively running her own race, as opposed to being in a team thing there. That if he goes, what does it do for the 22 other people there on the field that day? As opposed to if her hamstring went in a race, it's me, myself, and I who's disappointed about it. As opposed to it's a tricky sort of situation. I get it, because I certainly felt like it looked like he was going to be ready as well, but let's win it for him this year.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's got a fire in the belly, and I really like the way how he just contests the ball. And he just a little bit. I think it was Max Holmes who's getting. And Ollie Henry, he's impressing me.
Yeah.
Really is. I've got a really niche reference, and I don't know if you know this niche reference.
Go for it.
He reminds me of the actor who was in About a Boy, and he's also in something where he's just so striking. I need to look it up. Anyway, but Ollie Henry is impressing me because I don't know why I was skeptical, but I'll get the actor's name.
Oh, look, I just keep reminding some of my Collingwood supporting students and colleagues that if he was at Collingwood right now, he'd be a second highest scoring goal kicker, and he'd be almost number one. But of course he left because he was homesick and he needed to go 45 minutes up the road. It really upsets them, and I'm all for that.
I don't know if you can see this. So this is an actor who was in a lot of movies. His name's Nicholas Hoult, but he reminds me of Ollie Henry.
Oh, yeah. Well, just for the sake of everyone viewing, you'll need to push that a little bit further. Oh, too far. Somewhere in the middle. There we go. Hopefully for everyone watching and listening, that might clarify. For me, I had no idea in the first place. But
okay, that's okay.
Sorry. About a Boy references aren't my strong suit, I guess.
No, it's niche. I told you it was niche.
So... and again, we've said it a few times, we're recording this in a bit of a vacuum, but how are you feeling about how 2023 is shaping up for the Cats at this point?
Good. Better than 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Can we go all the way again?
Yes.
What are you thinking about the opposition that we've got to face? So, obviously, Collingwood, as we just touched on, flying along. Melbourne is playing more like the 2021 Melbourne as opposed to the second half of 2022 Melbourne. Brisbane's doing what Brisbane does, so who knows, that could mean they just choke come finals again. But obviously we've got Adelaide popping up, St Kilda popping up, Charlie Curnow kicking 9 and seeming to kind of help course correct the slippery slope that Carlton seemed like they'd been on. Port Adelaide's up and about. It seems like there's more competition than last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is that I want to see is that the fire that's in Holmes' Max's Holmes' belly. I want that fire to be replicated and that drive and and I think we will have that. But Melbourne a little bit they're a little bit they've got a lot of drive than they had because their season just went last year. So or maybe they're just good starters and they're just got to do that again.
Look, I'm worried about dealing with them if we don't have at least one legitimate ruckman back in the team. I know people will say what they want to say about a Reece Stanley or a Segler or someone like that if they go head to head with Gawn or Grundy, but if you have neither and you've got to take on both of them, I love Blitzarves. I love Sam De Koning and what they've been trying to do in the last couple of weeks, but it's a whole other beast.
Yeah.
So
no, they couldn't. Yeah.
We need to get a ruckman back in the team before we have to contend with them.
Yep, absolutely. I think Geelong are trying to actually delete the ruck role a little bit, and they're very clever in that. Like Hawkins is doing the rucking at the front.
It works so well for us.
Yeah, Radigalia in the back, then De Koning and Blitzarves. Yeah, it works really well, and like you keep interchanging it, and it's just. But we do need a real ruckman. But hopefully Stanley. He's going okay. It's actually pretty serious.
Yeah, it was a facial fracture around the eye sockets. So not a small recovery, I guess, but hopefully really, one that you run less chance of damaging that further than I guess you have of ankles and hamstrings and those sorts of things. So hopefully they'll go, okay, I assume there's probably a plate in there now, I'm guessing, of some sort.
Yeah.
And hopefully once the wounds around that kind of heal up and the swelling comes down, that's the cue to go.
Really cute photo on the Geelong socials with his son, two years old, who's just he's been in hospital for 3 or 4 nights, and his son's just like, Daddy! It was so beautiful.
They do some good stuff like that.
Yeah. And Jack Henry's training in full training.
Yes, he's back on the track. Hopefully awfully close by the time this goes to air, you'd like to think.
Yes, yep, really, hopefully. But no, I'm really optimistic, but gee, those pies. Like, the question that I have, is it 2010 or is it 2011? We won't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah,
Are they going to thrash us in the prelim, or are we going to beat them?
I'm wondering if,
in the grand final?
And if I think about the buzz going into round one, look, I don't think the current Collingwood DNA means that they're a team that will take it easy at any point. But I wonder if because they've kind of gotten their little mini revenge in a way by, winning it back over us in round one, if that just takes 1% of the edge off, that gives the Cats what they need to come in and do what they normally do, and when Collingwood tries to surge at the end, or it's just kind of close all game, as we kind of saw in the qualifying final last year, that Geelong strength just gets them over the line again. Yeah.
And we need Stengel. Hopefully Stengel comes back. Anyway, it's been a disaster for injuries, but we're still...
but none of them are season ending, which is fantastic so far.
So far. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So hopefully, So I'm optimistic, but it's very hard to do back to back. So
for sure.
Yeah.
So if we can do it, that's awesome. I mean, obviously, Geelong supporters, we know that very well between 07, 9 and 11, and the opportunities that came in the middle that we couldn't quite grasp. So who knows? Maybe 2023 is the year that we can kind of right that ship, and well, I think as a tightly crossed, there's a few dominoes that need to fall into place still, but hopefully again, none of them are long-term injuries, so hopefully everything comes together. Hopefully everyone else can stay out there. Hopefully it all clicks. There's a lot of hopefullys here, but hopefully Max Holmes can get what he rightfully deserved last year and just was unfortunate in missing out.
Yeah,
out on. Emily, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this love of the game, sharing this love of Supercoach. I want to make sure you have the opportunity to plug some of these various things. So obviously we were talking about the Patreon before with the Dr. Supercoach stuff and some social media stuff. Where should people go if they want to learn more about what you're up to, get some little insights when it comes to Supercoach? Where should everyone go?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Supercoach. So Supercoach Mama at Challis. I don't do my Twitter handle that much, but you should find me if you search Supercoach Mama.
I mean, if you need to as well, if you're watching the video version, it is right above your head right now.
Okay.
But yes, obviously audio people, you can hear that as well. And so some of the Dr. Supercoach stuff, the Patreon stuff that you were alluding to before, that's obviously patreon.com/, was it Dr. Supercoach?
Yes, I think
If I
so.
remember,
Yeah.
So there's a few different options for people there as well. Fascinating game to play. If you can find yourself a group of friends to play it with, that really
Super fun.
improves it even further, especially if you're new to it and you're learning your way through it. You can kind of crack a lot of jokes at each other's expenses, I'm sure. There's the drafting. Actually, have you ever jumped into the Supercoach draft before? We won't wade too deeply into it, but have you dabbled?
Yeah, I have dabbled. I love draft. I love draft night. I'm like a 3-year-old watching a movie. I lose attention halfway through and go and tunnel off. No, draft. I haven't got the long. My brain is all wired for the classic game and the long-term strategy of that. I just have not had the mindset for draft as well. So I have done it. I've done okay in it. Geelong, I mean, I really wish I should have done it this year because I would have just picked Geelong players like I normally do and we would have actually been doing okay. I would have got Cameron quite early. Stop thinking about Emily or Hawkins. But yes, no, I have dabbled.
Yeah, I don't mind that as well. So that is a really, really cool alternative for people if the core game is, well, I suppose it ultimately becomes that anyway. But like if the core game is not quite your flavour, it's a really fascinating alternative that generates a lot of interest as well and is a lot of fun. Especially as you say, the draft night's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Or draft weeks, depending on how coordinated you and your group are.
Oh my goodness.
Some of these things can really blow out, can't they?
Yeah, it's just like, Tom, you've got 24 hours. Why are you taking 24 hours to choose your selection? Move on, Tom.
Yeah, it can be awful like that sometimes. As always, to those watching and listening today, thank you for having done so. Subscribe to The Hoop Show on YouTube if you haven't done so, as well as Behind the Play on podcast feeds if you want the audio version of this show for those car trips that are, well, it's going to make it so much better. So please make sure to tune in, whatever your mode of enjoyment is, make sure to do so. Thank you very much, as always, for listening. Remain Geelong strong, and we'll see you next time.
Go Cats!